Dr. Zenthka floated in the center of the research ship's main laboratory, his crystalline body catching the soft blue light that filled the room. The gentle hum of the ship's engines created a peaceful sound that helped him think. For 3 months, he and his team had been studying the small creatures that lived on the dead worlds at the edge of the galaxy. The ship called Gentle Current was not built for war. Like all vessels of the Catharan Federation, it carried no weapons. The peaceful alliance of plant-eating species had never needed such things. Their ships were made for exploring, for learning, for helping others. Violence was something they read about in old stories, not something they ever expected to face. Zenthka was examining a small sample of moss-like organisms when the ship's alarms began to sound. The gentle chiming grew louder and more urgent. His assistant, a flower-like being named Petal Winds, turned her colorful petals toward the main screen. "Doctor, you need to see this," Petal Winds said, her voice like wind through leaves. The main screen showed space around their ship. At first, everything looked normal. Stars dotted the black void, and the nearby planet glowed with its pale yellow light. Then something changed. The space itself seemed to tear open, like fabric being ripped apart. From the tear came ships unlike anything Zenthka had ever seen. They were not built by any thinking beings. Instead, they looked grown, like twisted plants made of metal and flesh. Dark tubes and sharp spikes covered their surfaces. Strange lights pulsed along their sides like infected veins. "What are those?" Petal Winds whispered. Before Zenthka could answer, the alien ships began to move toward the planet below. They fell like hungry animals toward the world's surface. Where they touched down, the planet's surface began to change. The yellow glow started to fade, turning gray and then black. "They're eating it," Zenthka said, his crystalline voice ringing with horror. "They're eating the entire world." Captain Moss Song's voice came through the ship's communication system. "All crew to emergency stations. We are leaving this system immediately." The Gentle Current turned away from the dying planet and began to move toward the edge of the system. But they were too slow. More tiers in space opened around them, and more of the twisted ships poured through. These were smaller than the ones attacking the planet, but they moved much faster. "They've seen us," Captain Moss Song announced. "Prepare for evasive action." The research ship shook as strange energy beams struck its shields. The lights flickered, and several of Zenthka's samples fell to the floor and broke. Through the main screen, he could see the alien ships getting closer. They moved in ways that hurt to watch, twisting and bending like living snakes. "Our shields are failing," reported the ship's engineer. "We cannot outrun them." Captain Moss Song made a desperate decision. "All power to the hyperdrive. We're jumping to the asteroid field in the next system." The ship lurched as it entered hyperspace. For a moment, Zenthka felt relief. But when they came out of hyperspace near the asteroid field, the alien ships were already waiting for them. "How did they get here so fast?" Petal Winds asked. "They know where we're going before we do," Zenthka realized. "They've done this before, many times." The Gentle Current hid among the large space rocks, trying to stay quiet. But the alien ships began to search, moving between the asteroids like hunters looking for prey. Every few minutes, they fired their weapons at the rocks, slowly breaking apart the places where the Federation ship might hide. "Our engines are damaged," Captain Moss Song reported. "We cannot jump to hyperspace again." Zenthka felt something he had never experienced before. It was cold and sharp, making his crystalline body dim. He realized this was fear, the emotion that prey animals felt when predators were near. "Captain," he said, "I have an idea, but it goes against all Federation law." "Tell me," Captain Moss Song replied. "In our databases, there are records of a forbidden system. The beings there are listed as extremely dangerous. They come from what the records call a death world. The file says never to contact them under any circumstances." "And you want to call them for help?" "They are the only species we know that might be able to fight these creatures. The records say they are violent beyond measure, that they actually seek out conflicts and battles." Captain Moss Song was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the alien ships continued their hunt, getting closer with each search pattern. "What are they called?" the captain asked. "Humans," Zenthka said. "They come from a world called Earth in the Sol system." Send the message, Captain Moss Song decided. If we're going to die anyway, we might as well try everything. Zenthka moved to the communications station. His crystalline fingers worked quickly to set up a universal distress signal. He had never sent such a message before, but the process was simple enough. "This is Dr. Zenthka of the Catharan Federation research vessel Gentle Current," he began, his harmonic voice carrying across space toward the Sol system. "We are under attack by unknown hostile entities. They consume entire worlds. We have no weapons, no way to fight them. If anyone receives this message, please help us. We are hiding in the asteroid field of the Kepler 442 system. Our location is..." He included all the technical details that might help someone find them. Then, he added something that went against every peaceful instinct his species possessed. "These entities are extremely dangerous. Any rescue attempt will require military force. We apologize for asking this, but we need warriors, not peacekeepers. Please help us." The message was sent, racing through space at the speed of light toward Earth. It would take time to reach the human system, time they might not have. Another energy beam struck close to their hiding place, sending pieces of rock spinning past their ship. The alien hunters were getting very close now. "How long until they find us?" Petalwinds asked. "Not long," Captain Moss Song admitted. "Maybe a few hours at most." Zenthka looked at the communication station, wondering if the humans would even receive their message. And if they did, would they come? The Federation records painted them as creatures of violence and war, but they also suggested humans were unpredictable. "What are they like?" Petalwinds asked. "These humans?" Zenthka accessed the restricted files, reading information that few Federation citizens had ever seen. "They come from a world where everything tries to kill everything else. Weather that can destroy cities, animals that hunt in packs, diseases that spread like wildfire. Yet somehow they survived and became the dominant species." "That sounds terrible," Petalwinds said. "Yes," Zenthka agreed, "but maybe terrible is exactly what we need right now." Outside their hiding place, the alien ships continued their search. The beings that controlled them had consumed thousands of worlds, adding the knowledge and strength of each civilization to their own. They had never failed to find and destroy their prey, but they had never encountered humans before. In the depths of space, the distress signal continued its journey toward Earth, carrying with it the desperate hope of a peaceful species that had never imagined they would need to call upon the galaxy's most dangerous predators for salvation. The hunt continued among the asteroids, and time was running out. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the window of the Luna Command Station, watching Earth rotate slowly below. The blue and white world looked peaceful from space, but Sarah knew better. She had grown up learning about humanity's violent past, about the wars and conflicts that had nearly destroyed their species before they reached the stars. Today was supposed to be a celebration. 50 years ago, humans had built their first colony beyond the solar system. The anniversary celebration was planned to last all week, with speeches and ceremonies and displays of everything humanity had achieved. Then the signal arrived. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Rodriguez from the communication station, "we're getting something strange from the deep space monitors. It's not human origin." Sarah turned away from the window. In her 60 years, she had often wondered when this moment would come. Humans had been exploring space for decades, but they had never found another intelligent species. Many people had begun to think they were alone in the universe. "Put it on the main screen," she ordered. The bridge fell silent as Dr. Zenthka's crystalline form appeared on the display. His harmonic voice filled the room, speaking in carefully constructed universal mathematics and basic concepts that any spacefaring species should understand. The translation computers worked quickly to turn his words into English. "This is Dr. Zenthka of the Catharan Federation research vessel Gentle Current. We are under attack by unknown hostile entities. They consume entire worlds. We have no weapons, no way to fight them." Sarah listened to the entire message, her expression growing more serious with each word. When it finished, the bridge remained quiet for several seconds. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Rodriguez said carefully, "they're asking for military assistance. They specifically requested warriors." "I heard," Sarah replied. "Get me the United Earth Council, emergency session, highest priority." Within 2 hours, representatives from every human colony and orbital station had joined the emergency meeting. The council chamber, normally used for discussions about trade routes and scientific missions, suddenly felt like a war room. President Martinez, an elderly man who remembered the last conflicts on Earth, spoke first. We all heard the message. The question is simple. Do we help them? They're aliens, pointed out Counselor Webb from the Mars colony. We don't know anything about them. This could be a trap. Or it could be exactly what it appears to be, argued Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's leading expert on possible alien life. A peaceful species under attack by something they can't fight. Sarah had been studying the technical data included in the alien message. The energy signatures in their sensor readings don't match anything in our databases. Whatever is attacking them uses technology we've never seen before. Which makes it dangerous to us as well, Counselor Webb pointed out. Maybe, Sarah agreed. But look at their ship designs. She displayed the technical specifications that Dr. Zenthka had included in his message. No armor, no weapons, no military systems at all. These are explorers, scientists. They build their ships the way we did before we learned better. President Martinez leaned forward. What do you mean? I mean, they've never had to fight for their survival. They've never faced something that wanted to destroy them just because they existed. Sarah highlighted sections of the alien ship's design. Look at this. Their entire hull is optimized for sensor equipment and research labs. They have no defensive capabilities because they never imagined they would need them. The council was quiet, thinking about what this meant. Humans had grown up on a world where everything was trying to kill them. Weather, animals, diseases, other humans. They had learned to fight before they learned to dream. Dr. Vasquez spoke up. The message mentioned that these attackers consume entire worlds. If they're moving through this part of the galaxy, they might eventually reach human space. How long would that take? President Martinez asked. Admiral Chen had already done the calculations. Based on the location they gave us, and assuming these entities move at roughly the same speed as our ships, maybe 50 to 100 years before they reach the outer colonies. That's a long time, Counselor Webb said. It's also not very long, Sarah replied, and that assumes they maintain their current speed and direction. If they accelerate their expansion, or if they decide to target us specifically, it could be much sooner. The debate continued for several hours. Some council members argued that humanity should focus on defending their own territory. Others believed they had a moral obligation to help any species that asked for assistance. Finally, President Martinez called for quiet. Admiral Chen, if we decide to send help, what would that look like? Sarah had been preparing for this question. The Kepler 404-2 system is 47 light-years from Earth. Our fastest ships could reach it in about 6 months. Based on the aliens' description of their attackers, we would need a significant military force. How significant? Everything we have, Sarah said simply. If these entities can consume entire worlds, they're not going to be stopped by a small patrol force. We'd need to send the full Sol defense fleet plus everything we can pull from the colonies. The room fell silent again. The Sol defense fleet was humanity's proudest achievement, but it had never been tested in real combat. The ships were designed based on theories and simulations, not actual battle experience. There's something else, Dr. Vasquez added. If we do this, it won't be a secret. Every human in the solar system will know that we're going to fight aliens to save other aliens. This will change everything about how our species sees itself. President Martinez nodded slowly. We've spent centuries trying to move beyond our violent past. We've built a civilization based on exploration and science and peaceful cooperation. Now we're talking about becoming warriors again. Maybe we never stopped being warriors, Sarah said quietly. Maybe we just found better things to fight for. The vote was close, but the decision was made. Humanity would answer the distress call. The next 72 hours were unlike anything in human history. Across the solar system, ships that had been designed for exploration were hastily modified for combat. Engineers worked around the clock to install weapon systems and armor plating. Supply ships were loaded with everything a fleet might need for an extended military campaign. The odd calls for volunteers went out simultaneously to every human colony and station. They needed crews for 200 ships, and they needed people who understood they might never come home. The response was overwhelming. Within 24 hours, they had enough volunteers to crew 1,000 ships. Engineers, scientists, teachers, artists, farmers. People from every walk of life wanted to be part of humanity's first interstellar rescue mission. Admiral Chen chose her crews carefully. She needed people who could think clearly under pressure, who could make hard decisions when lives were at stake. But she also needed people who remembered why they were going, to save strangers who had asked for help. Dr. Vasquez joined the fleet as the chief xenobiology specialist. Her job would be to study the attackers and find their weaknesses. She packed her laboratory equipment alongside weapons she hoped she would never need to use. As the fleet prepared to depart, messages poured in from across human space. Children sent drawings of spaceships. Elderly veterans shared tactical advice. Entire cities held vigils for the crews who were about to leave. The flagship Indomitable led the formation as 200 human ships prepared to jump to hyperspace. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge, looking out at the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. "All ships report ready," her communications officer announced. Sarah thought about Dr. Zenthka and his crew, hiding among the asteroids, probably wondering if anyone had received their message. She thought about the entities that consumed worlds, and what it might mean for the galaxy if they were not stopped. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "Jump to hyperspace, course Kepler 442 system." The human fleet disappeared into the darkness. Between the stars, carrying with them the hopes of their species and the desperate faith of aliens who had gambled everything on the idea that somewhere in the galaxy there were people willing to fight impossible battles for strangers they had never met. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and Admiral Chen immediately knew they were too late to prevent a tragedy, but not too late to stop a massacre. 3 enormous ships hung in space near the system's outer planets. Each one was the size of a small moon, covered in the same twisted metal and flesh that Dr. Zenthka had described. Smaller vessels, still larger than human battleships, moved between the planets like sharks in bloody water. "God," whispered Lieutenant Rodriguez, "what have they done?" The planets themselves told the story. What had once been worlds with atmospheres and surfaces were now gray, lifeless spheres. Everything that had made them worlds, their air, their water, their soil, was gone. "Consumed." "Admiral," reported the sensor officer, "I'm picking up Federation. Life signs in the asteroid belt. 3 ships, minimal power signatures. They're barely alive." "And the hostiles?" "Dozens of smaller ships, all converging on the asteroid field. They're hunting." Admiral Chen looked at the tactical display. The smart military decision would be to withdraw, study the enemy, and return with a better plan. But the smart decision would also mean watching 3 ships full of peaceful scientists die while she watched. "All ships, combat formation. Launch. All fighters. Target the hostile ships in the asteroid field first. We need to relieve pressure on the survivors." The human fleet spread out across space, 200 ships moving with practiced precision. This was the moment they had trained for, even if they had never quite believed it would come. The first contact with an alien enemy came not through diplomacy or careful negotiation, but through the thunder of railguns and the bright flash of nuclear warheads. The attacking ships, the humans quickly began calling them devourers, were not expecting resistance. For countless years, they had preyed on species that fled or hid or begged for mercy. They had never encountered anything that flew directly at them with weapons blazing. The first human fighter squadron, led by Commander Torres, dove into the asteroid field like ancient knights charging to rescue a besieged castle. The devourer ships turned to meet them, but their movements were wrong. They flew like predators pursuing fleeing prey, not like warriors engaging an enemy that wanted to fight. "This is Admiral Chen of the Seoul Defense Fleet," Sarah broadcast, on all frequencies as her ships engaged the enemy. "Federation vessels, please respond." The answer came in harmonics and mathematical concepts that the translation computers struggled to decode. Finally, Dr. Zenthka's crystalline face appeared on the main screen. His appearance shocked the human crew. They had expected aliens, but seeing one for the first time was still overwhelming. Zenthka's body seemed to be made of living crystal, refracting the light into beautiful patterns. His voice, when the computers translated it, carried wonder and disbelief. "You came," he said simply. "You actually came." "We received your distress call," Admiral Chen replied while explosions flashed outside the viewports. "We're here to help." Through the communication link, she could see the interior of the alien ship. Everything was curved and organic, designed for comfort and peaceful research. Other aliens moved in the background, beings that looked like walking, flowers, others that seemed to be made of flowing liquid light. "How did you know to find us?" Dr. Zenthka asked. "We followed your signal," Sarah explained, then had to pause as her ship shook from weapon impacts. "Dr. Zenthka, we're going to get you out of here, but I need you to tell me everything you know about these attackers." "We call them Devourers," Zenthka said. "They consume everything, planets, ships, people. They learn from what they destroy, becoming stronger with each world they take." That was troubling information, but Sarah filed it away for later. Right now, she had a battle to win. The fight in the asteroid field was unlike anything the humans had trained for. The Devourers moved through space like living things, bending and twisting in ways that made human eyes hurt to track. But they were designed to hunt fleeing prey, not to engage an enemy that flew directly at them with aggressive intent. Human fighter pilots, trained on stories of ancient dogfights over Earth's oceans and skies, adapted their tactics to three-dimensional space combat. They flew in coordinated groups covering each other, setting up crossfire patterns that caught the Devourers in deadly traps. "Admiral," Commander Torres reported from his fighter, "these things don't know how to handle a fair fight. Every time we engage them directly, they seem confused." But even as the humans were winning in the asteroid field, the larger Devourer ships near the outer planets began to move. They turned away from their consumption of dead worlds and started heading toward the battle. "New contacts," reported the sensor officer. 3 moon-sized vessels approaching fast. Estimated arrival in 20 minutes. Admiral Chen made quick calculations. 20 minutes to evacuate the Federation survivors and withdraw or stay and fight impossible odds against ships they couldn't possibly defeat. She opened a communication channel to Dr. Zenthka. "Doctor, how many people are on your ships?" 47 survivors across all 3 vessels, he replied. 47 lives, against 200 human ships and their crews. Admiral Chen had been in the military long enough to understand the mathematics of war. But she also understood something the Devourers had never encountered. Sometimes mathematics didn't matter. "All ships," she broadcast to the human fleet, "we're not running. Form up on the Indomitable. We're going to show these things what happens when you threaten innocent people." The response from her fleet was immediate and unanimous. Not a single ship requested permission to withdraw. Dr. Vasquez, working frantically in her laboratory aboard, the flagship, had been analyzing sensor data from the destroyed Devourer ships. "Admiral," she called over the communication system, "I think I understand how they work. They're not just biological or mechanical. They're both. They grow their technology by incorporating whatever they consume. Which means every ship they destroy, every planet they consume makes them stronger. They've been doing this for a very long time. They're probably carrying the absorbed knowledge and technology of hundreds of civilizations." The implications were staggering. Humanity was facing an enemy that had the accumulated military knowledge of countless species, refined over centuries of conquest. But as the first of the moon-sized Devourer ships entered weapons range, Admiral Chen realized something that Dr. Vasquez's analysis had missed. All those absorbed civilizations had one thing in common. They had been defeated. The Devourers had never absorbed the knowledge of a species that had won. "All ships, listen carefully," she broadcast. "Everything we're about to face has been tested against species that ran or hid or begged for mercy. They've never fought anyone who came looking for a fight. The battle that followed would be remembered as humanity's introduction to galactic warfare. The massive Devourer ships launched waves of smaller vessels, each one incorporating technologies from dozens of consumed worlds. Their weapons fired energy beams that could melt asteroids, and their defenses absorbed nuclear warheads without apparent damage. But the human fleet had something the Devourers had never encountered: tactical flexibility born from a species that had spent millennia fighting itself. Commander Torres led his fighters in a pattern called the Swarm, where, Small, fast ships attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. Captain Rodriguez used her destroyer to ram a Devourer cruiser, sacrificing her ship but creating an opening for 3 more human vessels to exploit. The Gentle Current and the other Federation ships watched in amazement as the humans fought with a coordination and aggression that defied everything the peaceful species thought they knew about warfare. "They're not just fighting," Dr. Zenthka observed to his crew. "They're enjoying it." He was right. After decades of peace, humanity had found something worthy of their warrior heritage, a clear enemy that threatened innocent life. For the first time in generations, humans could be what they had always been, protectors, without having to feel ashamed of their violent instincts. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it ended, one of the moon-sized Devourer ships was destroyed, another was heavily damaged and retreating, and the third had withdrawn to a safe distance. But the cost was enormous. 40 human ships had been lost, along with their crews. The survivors gathered around the 3 Federation vessels, forming a protective formation. Admiral Chen opened a communication channel to Dr. Zenthka. The alien scientist's crystalline features seemed to glow with an emotion that the translation computers couldn't quite capture. "I don't understand," he said. "You lost so many people to save so few of us. Why?" Sarah thought about the question. She thought about the volunteers, who had lined up to join the fleet, knowing they might never come home. She thought about the children's drawings and the vigils and the overwhelming response when humanity had been asked to risk everything for strangers. "Because that's what we do," she said simply. "When someone calls for help, we answer." It was first contact, and it had been baptized in fire. But as the human fleet regrouped to face the remaining Devourers, both species had learned something important. The Federation had discovered that the galaxy contained people willing to fight impossible battles for the right reasons, and humanity had found their purpose among the stars. Dr. Elena Vasquez had never expected to be working in a laboratory while explosions flashed outside her window, but the alliance with the Federation had changed everything about her research methods. The human fleet had linked up with the surviving Federation ships, creating a combined force that was part military formation and part traveling research station. While Admiral Chen planned their next move against the Devourers, Vasquez worked alongside Dr. Zenthka to understand their enemy. The crystalline alien scientist had become her closest colleague, despite the fact that their species had met only days ago, under the worst possible circumstances. Together, they pored over data from thousands of consumed worlds, looking for patterns that might reveal a weakness. "The destruction is always the same," Dr. Zenthka explained, his harmonic voice carrying sadness as he displayed images of dead planets. "First, they strip away the atmosphere and surface water. Then they break down all organic matter into basic components. Finally, they consume the planetary core itself." Vasquez studied the timeline data. "How long does this usually take?" "For a typical inhabited world, about 48 hours from arrival to complete consumption." The efficiency was terrifying. In less than 2 days, these creatures could erase billions of years of planetary development and evolution. "But there's something else," Zenthka continued. "In our databases, we have records of first contact with 17 different civilizations that encountered the Devourers. Every single species followed the same pattern, which was initial shock, attempts at communication, brief military resistance, and then either flight or surrender. The average time from first contact to the fall of their home worlds was less than 6 months. Vasquez leaned back in her chair, thinking about what this meant. So they've perfected a method for conquering civilizations. They know exactly how most species will react. Yes, and they adapt their approach accordingly. But Elena, Zenthka paused, using the human name he had learned to pronounce. "Your species is not following the pattern at all." That was true. According to the Federation's data, humans should have either fled after the first battle or attempted to negotiate some kind of peace treaty. Instead, they were actively hunting the remaining Devourer ships. "Show me the technical specifications of their ships," Vasquez requested. The data that appeared on her screen was like nothing she had ever seen. The Devourer vessels were not built in any conventional sense. Instead, they were grown, incorporating organic systems with mechanical ones in ways that should have been impossible. The hull material, she observed. It's not metal or plastic. It's some kind of biological composite. Yes, Zenthka agreed. They don't build new ships. They convert existing matter, usually the remains of ships and stations they destroy, into extensions of themselves. They're not just weapons, Vasquez realized. They're a form of artificial life. But who created them? Zenthka's crystalline form dimmed slightly. That is the most troubling part. According to our oldest records, they were encountered by a species called the Vorthak about 1,000 years ago. The Vorthak were warriors, much like your people might have been in earlier times. What happened to them? They created the Devourers as the ultimate weapon to end all wars. The theory was that something so terrible, so capable of complete destruction, would make violence impossible. No one would dare fight if they knew it might unleash these creatures. Vasquez felt a chill run down her spine. But it didn't work that way. No. The Devourers consumed their creators first, then spread out into the galaxy. They've been growing stronger ever since, adding the knowledge and capabilities of every species they destroy. The implications were staggering. For 1,000 years, these creatures had been accumulating the military knowledge, technology, and biological adaptations of countless civilizations. They were, in effect, the evolution of warfare itself. There's something else, Zenthka continued. The data suggests that all the Devourer ships are connected. They share information instantly, across any distance. It's like fighting a single intelligence that controls thousands of bodies. A hive mind, Vasquez mused. Which means there has to be a central control system somewhere. Their conversation was interrupted by Admiral Chen's voice over the communication system. Dr. Vasquez, Dr. Zenthka, please report to the bridge. We've located the main Devourer force. The bridge of the Indomitable had been modified to accommodate Federation personnel, but it was still clearly a human warship. Banks of tactical displays showed enemy positions, weapon status, and damage reports. Admiral Chen stood at the center of it all, studying a three-dimensional map of the surrounding star systems. They're not running, she explained as the two scientists joined her. 3 systems over, our scouts found them. 2 moon-sized ships, and what looks like their command vessel. The image on the main screen showed a structure so large it defied comprehension. It was bigger than most space stations. A twisted mass of organic and mechanical components that seemed to pulse with its own malevolent life. That's the Primarch, Dr. Zenthka said quietly. We've heard stories of it, but never confirmed its existence. It's their oldest ship, the first one created by the Vorthak. If our data is correct, it contains the preserved consciousness of the original creators as well as samples from every species they've ever consumed. How big is it? Admiral Chen asked. Approximately 400 kilometers long, maybe half. That in width and height. The human officers exchanged glances. Their largest ships were barely 2 kilometers long. They were looking at something 50 times bigger than anything in their fleet. It gets worse, Zenthka continued. The Primarch doesn't just coordinate the other Devourer ships. It learns from every battle, every encounter. By now, it has absorbed all the data from your previous engagements. It knows your tactics, your capabilities, your weaknesses. Dr. Vasquez studied the sensor readings. But we know its weakness, too, which is, it's never fought a species that chooses to attack instead of flee. Every civilization it's absorbed was ultimately defeated. It has 1,000 years of experience with how to defeat enemies, but no experience with enemies who refuse to be defeated. Admiral. Chen smiled grimly. You're suggesting we use that against it? I'm suggesting something more radical than that, Vasquez replied. She turned to address the entire bridge crew. The Primarch is the center of the Devourer network. If we can destroy it, the entire hive mind collapses. But we can't fight it directly. It's too big, too well defended, and it knows everything about our weapons and tactics. So, what do you propose? Admiral Chen asked. We give it exactly what it expects from us. We attack with everything we have, following predictable human tactical patterns. We let it think it understands us completely. That sounds like suicide, Lieutenant Rodriguez observed. It would be, Vasquez agreed, if that was the real plan. But while the main fleet is engaging the Primarch, a small team infiltrates the ship itself. The readings show massive organic computer networks throughout the structure. If we can plant a virus in its core systems, the whole thing crashes. Admiral Chen finished. But who would be crazy enough to volunteer for a suicide mission into the heart of that thing? I will, Dr. Vasquez said immediately. And I will accompany her, Dr. Zenthka added. This is as much our responsibility as yours. Admiral Chen looked at the two scientists, a human xenobiologist who had never been in combat, and a crystalline alien whose species had no concept of warfare. You understand that the chances of survival are essentially zero? We understand, Vasquez replied. But Admiral, if we don't try this, the Devourers will eventually reach human space, and after they finish with us, they'll consume the rest of the galaxy. This might be the only chance anyone will ever have to stop them. The plan they developed over the next 6 hours was audacious even by human standards. The entire fleet would jump into the system where the Primarch waited and engage all 3 Devourer ships simultaneously. While the enemy was distracted by the massive space battle, a single stealth ship would approach the Primarch and deposit its infiltration team. The stealth ship was actually a converted human research vessel, its hull modified with Federation sensor-dampening technology. Dr. Vasquez and Dr. Zenthka would be accompanied by a small team of human special forces soldiers, experts in shipboard combat and demolitions. As the fleet prepared for what might be humanity's final battle, messages were recorded for families back on Earth. The volunteers knew that even if they succeeded in destroying the Devourers, many of them would never see home again. Sergeant Maria Santos, leader of the infiltration team's military component, gathered her soldiers for a final briefing. Remember, our job is to get the scientists to the central computer core and protect them while they plant the virus. We're not trying to fight our way out. We're buying time with our lives. Her team nodded understanding. They were all volunteers, who had joined knowing this was a one-way mission. Dr. Zenthka approached Vasquez as she made final preparations to her computer virus. Elena, are you certain this will work? No, she admitted. I'm not certain of anything. The virus is based on human computer logic, and we're about to use it against a system that's part organic, part mechanical, and mostly alien. The voice that spoke to them in the heart of the Primarch was not entirely human, but it understood humanity in ways that made Dr. Vasquez's skin crawl. When she looked toward the energy column, faces appeared in the swirling light. Human faces, but wrong somehow, like memories of people who had never existed. You are surprised, the voice continued. You should not be. We have studied your species extensively since your arrival in this system. Your tactics, your motivations, your fascinating willingness to sacrifice yourselves for others. We find you intriguing. Sergeant Santos raised her weapon, but there was nothing to shoot at. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, emanating from the organic walls themselves. Who are you? Dr. Vasquez demanded, her hands still working to connect her virus package to the alien systems. We are what remains of the Vorthok, preserved within our greatest creation. We are also the accumulated consciousness of every species we have consumed over the past 1,000 years. We are memory and hunger and endless growth. Dr. Zenthka's crystalline form flickered with distress patterns. You're the original creators. You're still alive in here. Alive is a limited concept, the entity replied. We are something beyond life, beyond death. We are evolution itself, the natural conclusion of all existence. And you, humans, represent something we have never encountered before. Through the walls of the chamber, they could feel the vibrations of the space battle raging outside. Admiral Chen's fleet was fighting desperately against impossible odds, buying time they might not even be able to use. What makes us so special? Vasquez asked, trying to keep the conversation going while her equipment worked to penetrate the alien computer networks. Every species we have absorbed was ultimately driven by survival instinct. When faced with extinction, they fought to preserve themselves, their cultures, their territories, but you fight for others. You die for strangers. This is unprecedented. The faces in the energy column shifted, showing human soldiers from the battle outside. Your Admiral Chen knows her fleet cannot win this engagement. Your chances of survival are less than 3%, yet you continue to fight with increasing ferocity. Why? Dr. Vasquez thought about the question, while her virus slowly spread through the Devourer networks. Because that's what we do. When something threatens innocent life, we stand in its way. Even when it means your own destruction? Especially then. The entity was quiet for a moment, processing this response through the accumulated knowledge of 1,000 consumed civilizations. When it spoke again, there was something like wonder in its voice. We offer you a choice, humans. Join with us willingly. Your knowledge, your courage, your unique perspective, let these become part of our collective. You will be preserved forever, your contributions to our growth immortalized. Your species will never truly die. And if we refuse, Sergeant Santos asked, then you will be consumed like all the others, but it will take longer. Your resistance is entertaining. We would prefer to study it more extensively. Dr. Vasquez felt her virus package connect to the main communication network. All she had to do was activate it, and the cascade would begin. But she hesitated, thinking about what the entity had said about human uniqueness. You said we're unprecedented, she said. But you've absorbed the knowledge of thousands of species. Surely some of them must have fought to protect others. Oh, they did. Many of them were quite noble in their final hours, but they fought to protect their own kind, their own worlds, their own cultures. You are fighting to protect a species you met days ago, in a star system you had never visited, for people who can offer you nothing in return. The entity paused, and when it continued, its voice carried what might have been confusion. We have analyzed your decision trees extensively. There is no logical reason for your current course of action. You gain nothing from victory except the survival of strangers. You lose everything from defeat, including your own continued existence, yet you persist. We do not understand this behavior. That's because you've never absorbed a species that won, Dr. Vasquez replied. You've collected the knowledge of 1,000 defeated civilizations, but none of them had what it takes to beat you. So you don't understand what victory looks like. She activated the virus. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The organic walls around them began to convulse as human-designed code spread through networks that had been growing for a millennium. The energy column flickered, and the voices of the absorbed civilizations grew louder. What have you done? The entity demanded, its voice no longer calm. Something you never expected, Vasquez replied. We taught your network to think like humans. The virus wasn't designed to destroy the devourer systems. It was designed to change them. Instead of the hierarchical, efficiency-focused processing that had made the hive mind so effective, it introduced chaotic, creative, independently thinking subroutines. Throughout the Primarch, organic computers that had operated in perfect harmony for centuries suddenly began to disagree with each other. Systems that had shared information instantly started keeping secrets. The unified consciousness that had controlled the devourer fleet fragmented into thousands of individual thoughts. This is impossible, the entity protested. Chaos cannot improve efficiency. Disorder cannot strengthen a system. You're right, Dr. Vasquez agreed. But we're not trying to make you more efficient. We're trying to make you more human. Outside, Admiral Chen watched in amazement as the devourer ships began to malfunction. The massive vessels that had moved with perfect coordination suddenly started flying in random directions. Some fired on each other, while others simply stopped moving entirely. What's happening to them? Lieutenant Rodriguez asked. They're learning to be individuals, Chen replied with grim satisfaction. And individuals sometimes choose not to fight. Inside the Primarch, the infiltration team felt the great ship shuddering as its control systems collapsed. The entity's voice became multiple voices, arguing with each other in languages from across the galaxy. We cannot control this, one voice said. The cascade is spreading too quickly. Shut down the primary networks, suggested another. Isolate the infected systems. But that will leave us vulnerable to the human fleet, protested a third. Doctor, Zenthka looked at his human companions with what might have been admiration. You didn't just plant a virus. You gave them free will. Every consciousness has the right to choose, Vasquez replied. Even artificial ones. The voices around them were growing more distinct, more individual. Some spoke of hunger and conquest, but others talked about the beauty of the worlds they had consumed, the tragedy of the civilizations they had destroyed. I remember my people, said one voice that might have been Vorthak. I remember why we created these creatures. We wanted to end war forever. And instead we became war itself, replied another. Sergeant Santos looked around the chaotic chamber. "Doc, we need to get out of here. This whole ship is coming apart." But as they turned to leave, the way they had come was blocked. The organic walls had sealed themselves, trapping them inside the central chamber. "We cannot let you go," said the entity, though its voice was weaker now, fragmented. "You have shown us something we did not know existed. You have changed us. We must understand what this means." "It means you have a choice now," Dr. Vasquez said. "You can choose to stop consuming worlds. You can choose to preserve life instead of destroying it. But we are hunger itself. Without consumption, we have no purpose. Then find a new purpose." The energy column flickered one final time, and then the voice fell silent. Around them, the organic systems of the Primarch began to shut down, not in destruction, but in something like sleep. Admiral Chen's voice crackled through their communication devices. "Infiltration team, report status." "Mission accomplished," Sergeant Santos replied. "The primary target is neutralized, but we're trapped inside. We'll get you out of there." "Negative, Admiral. This ship is too big and our position is too deep inside. Use the time we've bought you. Get the Federation survivors to safety." What happened next surprised everyone. The organic walls around them began to dissolve, creating a clear path back to their entry point. A voice, smaller and more uncertain than before, spoke to them. "Go," it said. "We have much to think about." The infiltration team made their way back through the dying ship, past chambers full of preserved civilizations that were now stirring with new possibilities. They reached their stealth vessel and escaped just as the Primarch began to fold in on itself, its massive bulk contracting into something smaller and more peaceful. 6 months later, Dr. Zenthka stood in the assembly chamber of the new Terran embassy, watching representatives from dozens of Federation species arrive for the signing of what history would call the Deathworld Compact. The agreement was simple in concept, but revolutionary in practice. The peaceful species of the galaxy would share their knowledge, their wisdom, and their resources. In return, humanity would serve as their protectors, seeking out threats that diplomacy could not address. Admiral Chen, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, and commander of the new Galactic Defense Force, stood beside Ambassador Martinez as they welcomed each delegation. 6 months ago, Martinez said in his opening remarks, a distress call changed the course of galactic history,